There are moments in life when the world feels perfectly aligned, when the future seems bright, stable, and finally yours. For Jasmine and Crystal, that moment should have been the day they stepped back from their handmade cabin, looked at each other, and whispered, "We did it." Months later, they were packing everything they owned into their van again, holding back tears as they admitted defeat. The dream that once felt unbreakable had begun to crack long before the internet ever noticed. And the truth behind their sudden retreat is far heavier than the smiling thumbnails ever revealed. From the outside, the cabin looked like a victory. Tall windows stretching toward the sky, soft pine glowing in the sun, a peaceful retreat carved out of quiet Canadian forest. Yet inside, the mood was different. Their voices were thin, their bodies slumped with a quiet exhaustion that no one could mistake. When they finally announced they were selling the cabin, the very place they spent 3 years building with their own bare hands, the internet froze. It didn't feel like a normal update. It felt like an emotional emergency. Their confession landed like a shockwave. Their address had been leaked. For more than a year, they'd been living with a silent dread, a sense of being watched in a place where no neighbors existed, where emergency help was hours away, and where the dark forest around them suddenly felt too quiet. Fans saw the tears, they saw the heartbreak. But what they didn't see was the depth of the fear building behind the scenes, or what moment finally pushed them to leave everything behind. Because something had changed out there, something neither of them felt comfortable fully explaining. And that was only the beginning of the unraveling. Long before any of this, long before millions of views and a global audience, Jasmine and Crystal were simply two young women wrestling with the same pressures so many feel. Rising rent, long work weeks, and a life that felt pre-written. Their days blurred into one another. Bills, commutes, responsibilities. Nothing was exactly wrong, but nothing felt right either. They needed air, they needed space, they needed a life that didn't feel like a countdown. The used Sprinter van they bought wasn't glamorous, it was a hollow metal shell. But to them, it was a blank canvas, freedom wrapped in steel. They learned everything from scratch. Power tools, wiring, plumbing, insulation. Every mistake was captured on a shaky camera. Their early content wasn't polished or perfect, but it was honest. Two women fumbling through DIY tasks, laughing, sweating, comforting each other, and discovering strength they didn't know they had. The world connected with that rawness, and without realizing it, they had planted the first seeds of a story that would one day grow far beyond their control. Yet at the time, all they felt was hope, a fragile, beautiful hope that life might finally be theirs again. They had no idea how much that hope would cost them later. The van wasn't just transportation, it was rebellion, a refusal to follow a script that no longer made sense. They drove across Canada and down through the US, filming everything from snowy mountains to dusty desert roads. Their dogs, Izzy and Bella, became emotional characters in the story. Their relationship became a symbol of joy and authenticity. Millions began watching, not for tension, not for chaos, but because Jasmine and Crystal represented something rare, a life lived deliberately. Their audience wasn't passive, they were devoted. They rooted for them, cried with them, celebrated milestones, and felt personally invested in every decision. But when parasocial bonds grow deep, they can create invisible expectations. Fans begin to feel like family. And family doesn't always understand boundaries. Still, at this point, the journey felt golden. Success seemed pure. And yet, even in those early days, pressure began to gather quietly around them. Pressure they did not yet recognize. Freedom has a cost. As the channel grew, so did the obligations. AdSense payments fluctuated wildly. Sponsorships arrived with deadlines and expectations. Patreon created a space where devoted fans paid for more access, which meant sharing more of themselves than ever before. Every sunrise became potential content, every struggle became a storyline, every moment of rest felt like something they needed to justify. They weren't just travelers anymore, they were a brand. A media company run by 2 people living out of 60 square feet with 2 dogs and limited Wi-Fi. The exhaustion crept in slowly. Not dramatic, not obvious, just a quiet, steady draining. They longed for stability again, not to settle, but to breathe. A cabin, they thought, would give them the mental grounding they desperately needed. But building a home on camera is not the same as building a private life. The decision that was supposed to save them would soon place them under an even harsher spotlight. They didn't buy a finished home, they bought raw land in the remote Canadian wilderness, the kind of place where winter reaches -40 degrees, where frost creeps through walls, and where the silence at night feels ancient. Most people would have walked away. They saw potential. For 3 years, they lifted beams, cut planks, installed solar arrays, learned about septic systems, poured concrete, and rebuilt a structure that should have been condemned. Their bodies hardened, their skills sharpened, their confidence bloomed. Each video brought millions along for the journey. Every window installation, every milestone, every moment of frustration and triumph. The cabin became more than a home. It became the channel's heart, a character, a dream, a symbol of everything they believed in. But one detail would soon haunt them. The enormous windows designed to bring nature in also allowed the world to peer back. The forest that once felt protective started to feel watchful, and what surfaced later would be far more unsettling than they expected. It began slowly, almost invisible at first. A landmark in the background, a unique ridgeline, a reflection in a window. Small clues that went unnoticed by them, but not by everyone watching. Online sleuthing is powerful. One tiny detail can unravel an entire map. Soon, the whispers grew. People online were starting to piece together their location. Maybe it wasn't malicious. Curiosity often isn't. But curiosity has consequences. The realization hit like ice. Their sanctuary wasn't truly hidden. Their cabin wasn't unreachable. Their privacy wasn't intact. Some insiders whispered that strangers had been spotted too close for comfort, though nothing was officially confirmed. What was confirmed was the fear, a very real, very personal fear of living hours from help while thousands of people knew exactly where they slept at night. The nights grew heavier. Shadows seemed louder. The isolation that once felt peaceful now felt exposed. And then came the moment, the one they still speak about cautiously. The moment they knew staying was no longer an option. Whatever happened out there, it changed everything. When the final video began, the pain was undeniable. They weren't announcing an exciting next chapter. They were mourning one. Years of labor, hundreds of thousands of dollars, a sanctuary shaped by their own hands. Memories carved into every beam and board, gone. Selling the cabin wasn't a choice, it was a necessity. Their faces said what their words didn't. They were tired of being afraid, tired of being visible in a place meant to be their refuge, tired of battling attention they never asked for. They thanked their audience with trembling voices, grateful but clearly shaken. It wasn't just a move. It was a retreat from something they no longer felt safe confronting. For the first time, the dream that once empowered them had turned into something that held too much weight. But their story didn't end in defeat. Something unexpected emerged in the aftermath. In losing the cabin, a new kind of clarity surfaced. They realized privacy wasn't a luxury, it was survival. They learned that boundaries weren't selfish, they were necessary. They discovered that stepping back wasn't quitting. It was choosing peace in a world that demands constant visibility. Their future now looks different, calmer, more selective, more intentional. They no longer film everything. They no longer let the audience into every corner of their personal world. They are rebuilding their life on their own terms, quietly, privately, safely. And maybe that is the twist in their story. The collapse that looked like an ending might actually be the beginning of the life they were meant to have all along. As they closed the cabin door for the final time and walked back toward their van, the van that started it all, they weren't running away. They were reclaiming their freedom once again. And somewhere out there, far from the glare of uninvited eyes, their next chapter is quietly waiting.